How's it? Coming to you from Africa.
So the emperor has no clothes. Pseudoscience falls under the question, what is science? And thus it is technically metaphysics. How the word metaphysics has itself been publicly diluted of its intended meaning is at the core of the travesty. Metaphysics is the name given to the process of deciding what is science and what is not science. Those who claim that metaphysics is pseudoscience do not have the vaguest clue as to what the words science and metaphysics mean. They should be pointed towards a dictionary. That most scientists ignore this with derision, and that some dictionary definitions also partially take on this false veneer, shows the extent to which dogma has replaced method in contemporary academia. And the real success in modern engineering originates with science that is mostly prior to Einstein's popularity. Academia celebrates those successes of the distant past as their own. How the ghosts of Tesla, Galileo, Newton, Descartes, Pythagoras, and Euclid must be howling with indignation at the prime sophist, Einstein. As was seen in the previous articles, when Einstein's formulae are applied to the solar system in evolutionary algorithms, then the planets would move from their stable Newtonian orbits by amounts that are not at all in keeping with geological timeframes. If gravity moved at light speed, the Moon would depart Earth at over 400 meters for each of its orbits. This would place the Moon at the impossible position of the Earth's surface less than 70,000 years ago. Earlier articles showed numerous proofs against Einstein. Certainly GPS cannot use his relativity. That is just another vulgar internet rumor. Key words to research the psychology of pseudoscience are groupthink, sophistry, science of the gaps, argument from authority, argumentum ad hominem, and the authority figure. But all you really need are logic and courage. Any computer programming language will force the logic out of you given enough time and effort. Courage? Perhaps spend some time in Africa. Established pseudoscience likes to use the phrase conspiracy theory to detract from its deceit. If anyone who theorizes about a conspiracy is wrong for doing so, then conspiring becomes the very definition of acceptable. It is wrong to reveal a conspiracy. How deep the rot lies. The mentality of neo-fascism is simply that the more an idea is monetized, then the more it is said to be true, and if it is a new idea, then it is said to be false. The simplest method ever contrived. Rule by naked emperor. It is vital to see that sophistry relies on hidden complexity within jargon, which really just filibusters the contradictions in a theory. Be aware of locating the psychological dissonance in others, and especially in yourself, as a vital clue to where falsehood has been masked with assumption and belligerence. It is not all that hard to identify egotism. Be mindful of the emotive tactic of belittlement, which avoids any question of logic by making derisive suggestions towards the questioner. These usually attempt to refocus away from the error with the phrase, "You do not understand," rather than simply explaining the issue. The sighing and rehearsed harumphing, all part of what convinced that person to capitulate to the false idea in the first place. Such psychological trickery is often the hallmark of those who ironically claim that psychology is pseudoscience. The pseudoscientist relinquishes to feelings of inferiority and thus pretends to see how wonderful the emperor's clothes are. Remember, they are only deceiving you because they were themselves deceived by their own ego. The false integrity of ego is what reinforces the delusion. They do not want to appear foolish. That is why they pretend to understand that which is not understandable. When the anger surfaces, then you have trapped your beastie. Be swift and precise with your analysis. It is often better to be stoic rather than empathetic, but that is a judgment call that depends on the situation. The primary tactic of pseudoscience is to continually appeal to ever more jargon in order to avoid blatant contradictions. This is the grand failing of the by-rote exam method, which reinforces sophistry with the glamour of status. Any complex idea consists of numerous basic logical ideas, so continually shifting the goalposts with regurgitated catchphrases is a means to avoiding basic logic. Don't let them get away with this. The more they try to avoid logic, keep returning to the contradiction. Here's where they were often bullied into accepting the sophistry, and they will attempt to use anger and jargon in the same way it was used upon them. You are entitled to keep repeating their error if they keep avoiding the logic of it. Ask who taught you that, so that they recall how the sophistry became embedded in their psyche. The main articles listed on my homepage deal with all the formulae of relativity in turn, and open up more contradictions at almost every step. This is ultimately a subject of ethics, because the shining example of academia and the scientific method is actually false. Thus the future is a potential disaster. Remember World War I, World War II and apartheid? When madmen and fools became rulers? That was just a consequence of ignoring logic in favor of superficial status. That was the shadow of fear overpowering logos. The popular relativist deceit is to detract from their contradictory paradigm with the phrase, "The Earth is not an inertial reference frame," all the while ignoring the fact that the Earth is used as a reference frame throughout, most specifically in the twins paradox, as well as the Michelson-Morley Experiment. Of course, velocity is not inertia anyway. Relativity formulae only use velocity, never inertia. It is easy to bluntly refute everything I've said here because Nobel Prize. But if you think logic does not matter as much as accolades, regalia, ribbons and trophies, then you are encouraging the anti-meritocracy, neo-fascism. Are we going to relive the 20th century all over again? Or are you willing to live and die for the sake of truth at every point? Because the longer you wait to live purely for truth, the sooner you will be beguiled to die for lies. History is waiting for you. Your offspring will inherit your shadow and also your light. Then your ghost will watch in the evermore, in anguish or in satisfaction at the consequences of your actions. Now.